Today is a special day here at Dodgers Nation. You know him from ESPN's Sunday Night Baseball telecast. He's also the host of the ESPN Baseball Tonight podcast, essential listening for all baseball fans out there. The great Buster Olney. Now, Buster, growing up, I loved all the great Dodgers, Mike Piazza, Sean Green, Gary Sheffield. But when I was hitting 212 for JV baseball, I knew that my ticket to the show was not going to be in Major League Baseball. So I idolized guys like you, Mr. Buster Olney. So very special today have you here on Dodgers Dugout Live. Thanks for the time.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Doug. And I would say this, that you and I had a realization at about the same time. I've told you before, I was a huge Dodger fan growing up. He was a huge Laker fan growing up in Vermont. And it was about that age, 14, 15, 16, when I realized at 5'7" 3/4 that I was not going to be the Dodgers second baseman. I was not going to be the Lakers power forward, and I had to find something else to do. So I needed a similar inspiration. Thank you.
Yeah, I literally had a coach tell me once that I'm better at talking about baseball than playing baseball. So once I had that realization, I kind of knew that it was going to be my ticket to the show. But Buster, great to have you on. Busy time. You got the All-Star game coming up, the trade deadline in less than 20 days now. So that's coming around the corner. But we got to start with the current state of the Los Angeles Dodgers. You look at this team. They've gone 22-22 in their last 43 games. They started the year playing 500 ball, had a nice stretch where they went 21-6, but then they were decimated by some key injuries. You lose Mookie Betts, who is heading for his second MVP season. You lose Max Muncy. Yamamoto goes down. Dodgers fans are freaking out. They just got swept by the Phillies, a team that a lot of people expect them to play in the NLCS, but you have a ton of injuries. If you're a Dodgers fan right now, do you look at it and say, okay, it's because of the injuries, or is it run deeper than that? On a scale of 1 to 10, Buster, what should the freak out factor be for Dodgers fans at the moment?
I think about a 5. I would not go full freak out. And you know, let's face it, right now, the Philadelphia Phillies are the best team in baseball, but there is a long way to go in the 19. And I'm going to speak from the perspective of someone who, as once a Dodger fan, in 1988, there was no question through that regular season, the New York Mets were the best team in the National League. They killed the Dodgers that year in the regular season. And yet, you get into the postseason and anything can happen. You look at it big picture, the Dodgers are fine. Like to make the postseason, 98% chance today, according to Fangraphs, to do that. They're 7 games ahead in the National League West. They also have serious problems, right? And they have things that they need to address. Number one, the rotation. We don't know exactly, when different guys are going to come back. I would imagine because the Dodgers, over the last decade and Andrew Friedman's time running the baseball operations, they tend to slow play their injuries with their starting pitchers. They want to crank them up for October. So when I saw Tyler Glasnow go down, I was like, he's getting his midseason break. That's what the Dodgers have often done. So you would expect that he would be back. We'll see what condition Kershaw's in. We don't know how much help they're going to get out of other guys. I do think they're going to be aggressive in the trade market to add a starting pitcher, but are they okay to win the division? Absolutely. Are they okay to make the playoffs? Absolutely. And then we don't know what the state of their pitching staff is going to be once they get into the postseason. We're still 3 months away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at that 1988 season, the Dodgers lost 10 of 11 games to the Mets. Then they beat them in the NLCS. You just kind of have to throw out the records for the regular season, especially when this is not the team you're going to be facing. But I think when you look at this team, you point at the biggest issue. So many questions with this starting rotation. And we saw in the offseason, it's kind of wild to think about this, Buster. You're a team that goes out there and commits over $1.2 billion in free agency. You would think that maybe you won't have to address a ton of needs at the deadline, but starting pitching is one that they definitely pretty much have to go all in on. I mean, how big do you think the Dodgers are going to go when it comes to starting pitching at the deadline? Do you think they're going to pursue the top names like a Garrett Crochet, a Skubal, if he comes available, or do you think it's more of a number 2 or 3 type starter?
I think it's the best available because there are just not that many, right? There are just not that many that you could actually take a look at. The best guy probably in the marketplace right now is Garrett Crochet of the Chicago White Sox. But as you well know, there's going to be this big question about his innings. Coming into this year, the max was in his career was around 50. He's already blown well past that. He's thrown more than twice that many. And so anybody acquiring him would have to be concerned about how he would do down the stretch. I think if you look at the Dodgers' history, they handle pitchers like that well. You could get a Garrett Crochet and tell him, look, we're going to basically give you a month off and then crank you back up. His talent is undeniable. Big, powerful left-hander. He's under team control for 2025. So I think that would be someone who'd be really attractive, but it all depends on how they feel about the question of, is Crochet going to wear down as the season goes along? If you want to go rental, Jack Flaherty, the hometown kid, maybe that would be something the Dodgers would take a look at. We do know he's going to be available. An interesting name to me is Yusei Kikuchi. In recent days, the Toronto Blue Jays have been communicating with other teams. Yep, all of our rentals are going to be available before the trade deadline. They're clearly making decisions. They put Kevin Kiermaier on the waiver wire. Kikuchi is someone who's had a great year, coming off one of the best starts of his career. He's left-handed. If you remember when there were all those the 24 hours when we wondered if Ohtani was going to wind up with the Blue Jays. One of the theories was that he was going to wind up with Kikuchi, and they were going to something about a restaurant. Or I didn't quite follow it, but maybe Kikuchi's going to go to the Dodgers to join Ohtani. Those would be two of the more interesting names to me. Chris Bassett, I think, would be a guy every contender would love, but he's under contract for next year, and the Blue Jays have signaled to other teams they're going to try to win in 2025. I don't think he'll become available. And look, Skubal's fun for all of us to talk about. Maybe the Tigers would look at him and say, look, we need offensive players. We need position players. The Dodgers would be potentially a good match. The Baltimore Orioles, loaded with minor league prospects, position player prospects. Maybe they would be a good match. But I just don't know if the Tigers are serious about winning in 2025, how you could trade a guy who's going to be in the conversation for the American League Cy Young Award.
Yeah, that's the big wild card, is his availability. But just kind of going back to Crochet, I think that's the most fascinating one, because, I mean, you look at impact starters, guys that if they get hot in October, they can carry you. We saw 2014 Mad Bum, 2019 Strasburg. The innings is definitely a little bit of a red flag probably for some teams, but I look at this Dodgers team and I say they gave $325 million to someone who had never thrown a pitch in the show. They traded for and extended Tyler Glasnow, a pitcher that the most starts he's ever made in a season was 21, most innings 120. I don't think this team is that risk averse where they say, okay, Garrett Crochet, when you see the stuff, they would have the top two strikeout guys in games 1 and 2 of a series with Glasnow and Crochet. And yes, as you point out, it's definitely, I mean, Tommy John surgery, missed 22, pitched 13 games out of the bullpen in 2023. He only made 12 minor league starts. And before the season, the most innings he had pitched in a season was 62. And that was for Tennessee, which I know that's Vanderbilt's rival. Okay. It's Tennessee right there. But if you had to predict and guess which team ends up with Garrett Crochet, would it be the Dodgers, or do you think it'll be another team?
I think it is, and it's purely a guess at this point. We know that teams are really focused on the draft. I don't think a lot of the trade talk has started in earnest, but we know that Andrew Friedman every year at the trade deadline makes big strikes. I think that they would be the team most likely to do that. You mentioned the word risk. That's what so many of these teams do now, is focus on risk management. Well, if you're the Dodgers and you have all that money, all the resources they have, they are a team that can take more risks than other teams. And I'm betting on the upside, right? That's what they seem to do with the choices of some of their starting pitchers. James Paxton would be an example of that. When he's at his best, right, he's great, but he also has the injury history. But the Dodgers, looking at him, figured, hey, we'll take a shot at that. And I do think there's something to the art of sort of winding down starting pitchers and then getting them cranked up for the postseason. If he were to, say, for example, pitch for the Orioles right now, I would suspect that they would just try to push him through and go through the postseason. Again, if you're the Dodgers, you could get him, for lack of a better way to describe it, give him a few weeks off and then, get him back. The fact that he's on the White Sox and being this dominant to me is a great sign about his mental makeup. My son and I, Jake, we do a fantasy league together, and he wanted Garrett Crochet, and I'm like, dude, guys on bad teams, that is a tough thing to live with, and Garrett Crochet has worked through that. Like, he has a chance to be in the American League Cy Young conversation on the worst team in baseball. that really tells you a lot about his emotional makeup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you have a fantasy team. I know that you tell your son that you was your idea to get Wyatt Langford. I listen to the pod Buster. I need a Buster only bobblehead behind me. But yeah, I think that's a fantastic point that you have the lead in the division and you also have your eyes on October. You have the depth to say, okay, we are going to get him in a position where he can peak at the right time. And then if you need to use him for multiple innings as a lights out reliever during certain spots in October, that's an option as well. One to follow up on, you say Kikuchi.
I think it was Jake Peavy. Good. That's an important point. I think it was Jake Peavy was the first one I heard mention that possibility. You can get Garrett Crochet. It doesn't mean you have to lock him in as a starting pitcher for October. You can basically say, look, we're looking for this year's version of Andrew Miller for the postseason. And Garrett Crochet could be that guy when you're facing potentially the Phillies with Kyle Schwarber, left-handed hitter, Bryce Harper, left-handed hitter, Bryson Stott, left-handed hitter, Brandon Marsh, left-handed hitter. I mean, he really would be an excellent pickup, whether you used him in the bullpen or in the rotation.
Him and Soto in the World Series. I mean, that would be absolutely electric, moments like that. But you mentioned Yusei Kikuchi, great start against the Giants, 7-3, had 13 punch outs. Do you see a world where maybe with a lot of the questions about this Dodgers rotation, if they're truly all in on winning the World Series this season, and you're saying, you know what, we can't bet on some of these guys just because we don't know how they're going to perform if they return or if they're going to be healthy, could you see them maybe getting a Crochet and then maybe trading for a Kikuchi and then trading someone like a Walker Buehler to another team or one of their current pitchers like a Landon Knack to try to kind of piece out this rotation just because you would have kind of a logjam in the starting rotation at that point?
Yeah, first off, I think that it'd be really hard to trade Walker Buehler because you don't. The potential buying team would not know exactly what they were acquiring. Could I see them acquiring two? Yes, because Andrew, look, since he took over, if you were to do some sort of a ranking on who's been the most aggressive at the trade deadline, who's landed the biggest player, Andrew would, without a doubt, be number one on that list, far and away, in terms of, you know what, we have resources, we're going to use them, we're going to get Manny Machado, we're going to get you Darvish, we're going to get the best guy out there. And the Dodgers, this is part of the benefits of having such a good scouting and development system where even if you make these big trades, with the Nationals and other teams, you're still in a position where you can have enough assets to go out and make trades. And I think, Andrew, it's interesting. The one thing I'd push back on you on this is that I remember saying early in the year, I thought that there were, three teams that were must win the World Series this year. One would be the Yankees, maybe the only year they have Juan Soto. Two would be the Phillies, who were the best team in baseball in the middle of last October and didn't finish off and win the World Series. Number three were the Dodgers. I've mentioned that to some executives, and they have said, no, they're not. They're not absolutely must win the World Series or bust in terms of how they're doing things, because we know this, unlike the Yankees, who we don't know what they're going to be in 2025, we know the Dodgers are going to be great. We know the Dodgers are probably going to be great in 2026 with the makeup of their roster, and Andrew's done a great job of managing the payroll, so I don't think there's that absolute got to have it right now in the way that there is for the Yankees to upgrade the roster before this year's trade deadline.
I think you could absolutely make that case. I think that there's the perception of Dodgers fans, and then there's the reality about how the organization actually operates as far as pushing all the chips in the middle, throwing out the watch, the wife's earrings, Leon the mortgage, that kind of stuff, right? Are you going to do that? Or are you going to say, okay, we want to win, but we don't want to completely sell the farm to do it? You're right with Juan Soto and them trying to extend them. The Dodgers, you have Ohtani for 10 years. You have Mookie locked up. You have Glassdown and Freddie locked up. But we still haven't had a parade here in Los Angeles to celebrate a World Series since 1988. And I always say here, parades over prospects. And this is a hungry, starving fan base for a World Series where we have a parade. But I do think that every single year that the Dodgers go without winning a World Series with Shohei Ohtani, the pressure continues to mount. So my thing is, why not just win it in year one and then just get a little dynasty, have that dam break, and then maybe have a dynasty? But yeah, I do agree. I mean, those three teams with the rosters where they're set up,
pressure builds. First off, I was, when you were talking about the first time, it would be the first time to have a parade since 1988. I remember it was about 2014. One of the Dodgers looked at me and said, I'm so sick of Kirk Gibson. But he meant it totally as a compliment. Like before every game, they would run the highlights of that. It's interesting. And you ask yourself this question about the pressure mounting. Like I, lived in New York for a lot of years. There is enormous pressure on Brian Cashman right now, their general manager. There's enormous pressure on Aaron Boone. Is there enormous pressure on Andrew Friedman at this moment? No. They don't win the World Series. I don't think he has pressure. However, I do think there's a lot of pressure on Dave Roberts. I do think probably because, as a manager who's not making as much money as Andrew, it's a lot easier to change the manager than any other spot. So I think that, that pressure point is on that manager spot for the Dodgers this year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 700 million reasons why Andrew Friedman has nothing to worry about, and that's the contract stipulation for Shohei Ohtani. Dave Roberts was probably reading that thing 5 or 6 times, hoping to see his name, but he didn't see that in there. So you're absolutely right. It's a lot easier to move off a manager in that kind of contract than all these players that are locked up. But another big question in Dodgerland, Buster, is what the Dodgers are going to do at shortstop when Mookie Betts returns from his fractured left hand. He was heroically playing that position at an average level at the age of 31 for the first time in his career. But Miguel Rojas, he's done a fantastic job. He's been top 5 defensively in essentially every single defensive metric. And also his offense has impressed as well. It's hitting 284, an above average bat. Do you think that when Mookie returns, they keep Rojas at short, or do you think they put Mookie there, or do you maybe go out there, try to trade for a Bo Bichette, put him at short, maybe Rojas at third, but for months he gets back and put Mookie back to second? Just what do you think the Dodgers are going to do at shortstop when Mookie comes back off that injury?
That first off, I think it's TBA in part where I think they have to sort of assess where they are with other parts of the team. I do know this. They were absolutely devoted to the idea of trying to make this work with Mookie. Like, the players invested. I mean, you've been out there at Dodger Stadium before games and watching Mookie do his pregame work with Rojas. It is incredibly impressive. And they want to reward that. But this time away, I think, is going to change the equation. And I did, early in the year when Mookie was making some mistakes, I was watching that play and I'm like, man, in October, that is really hard to play through mistakes. And if they felt like that, his shortstop play was going to be average or below average, that in the end, in a big game, you want Rojas, you want your defender playing shortstop. I don't know if that perspective is going to change. A lot of that probably has to do with who's on the mound, where the strikeouts are, where the ball is going to be put in play. So I'd need more information before giving you a hard answer on that. But I know this, they have just deeply appreciated how Mookie has worked hard at shortstop.
Yeah, the word I've been told when it comes to him playing that position is obsessed. He's been obsessed with being a great shortstop. And that's the kind of player and person that Mookie is. Everything he does it great. I mean, he's been doing an absolute awesome job as an analyst while he's been out. There's nothing that Mookie Betts can't do, but it just makes you wonder if that is the best version of the Dodgers. Now, as far as Bo Bichette, do you think that he's someone that they might explore? Do you think he'll get dealt?
So the information I mentioned, the Blue Jays, the fact Kikuchi's available because his contract expires at the end of this year. The signals coming out of the Blue Jays as of yesterday were that they were only going to talk about rentals to be traded. Now, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, let's face it, it's been disappointing the last couple of years in what the Blue Jays have been able to accomplish or haven't been able to accomplish. They're still in the window, the back end of it, in which maybe we thought those guys are going to be the core of a Blue Jays championship. I don't think it's the right decision for them to punt, and to defer all this until next year when both those guys will be playing last year their respective contracts. But that may be the reason that's going to happen. I think in part because so much money was spent on the renovation of the Rogers Center that they don't feel like they can tear it down to the studs. I can sit here as a reporter and say, just sell everybody, get a whole bunch of prospects in. But I think they're concerned about getting people into the ballpark after spending so much money on a renovation.
Yeah, and it just kind of feels like those things where it's like the 2016 Cubs. They're going to be the next dynasty. And then in Toronto, you have Bo and Vladdy. Like that core is going to be a dynasty as well. I mean, until it happens, you just never know, especially in this sport. But kind of switching gears to the outfield, that's another area the Dodgers might look to address. And you look at the 6 through 9 hitters for the Dodgers this season. They've combined to hit 216, a 625 OPS. They're at the bottom or in the bottom third at essentially every single offensive category. What is your sense for what the Dodgers might do in the outfield? Do you think they might go after a name like a Randy Arozarena or a Luis Robert Jr. of the White Sox?
Luis Robert, obviously incredibly talented. He also is someone, and he's under contract for a few years. It's been difficult for the White Sox to get him on the field. He's been constantly hurt. I can't imagine a first-year general manager in Chris Getz going through his first deadline where he's going to just, scurry this guy out of town without getting exactly what he wants. Do I think that Andrew is going to pay sticker price given the injury history? No, I don't. I would say this. I mean, we've all been watching the bottom of that lineup and talking about how poor it's been. It's gotten a little better. Like, it's ticked upward. Outman, since he came back from the minor leagues, he's been better. There's certainly parts of what Pages does that give you hope that he's going to be better. So I think that the production of the guys that they have on their roster right now, they will follow that to some degree. I mean, these are all accomplished major leaguers for the most part that, they've been waiting and waiting and waiting on. I think that's the instinct, but Andrew will monitor the marketplace. And if there's some outfield opportunity that pops up where adding a guy, I could see them striking. But a lot of it depends on how the veterans are swinging in the days leading up to the deadline. I really believe that in their lineup because I just don't see that as being a big of a priority as the starting pitching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at that Rays team around 5 games back in the wild card. Randy Arozarena got off to a slow start, but since June 1st, he's really picked things up. Do you think the Rays will be sellers, and how seriously do you think they'll consider moving Arozarena? Do you think that if it's not the Dodgers, it's another team, or it just kind of depends on how these next couple of weeks go?
Yeah, the Rays, even when they're at their best, they're always managing payroll, right? And we know that the Dodgers and the Rays can make trades. They speak the same language. Through the years, that has been the case. I do think that if someone comes in and wants to get Arozarena and is willing to pay the Rays price, that they will move him because that's what they do. They turn over their roster. They always try to stay one step ahead of their payroll challenges. They've generally speaking they've been a successful team in terms of being competitive every year. That has been the most important thing. But it's led to the trades of a Tyler Glasnow and other accomplished players on their team. So I do think that they will listen to other teams that will talk about Randy.
Yeah, and by the sounds of it and kind of what you said earlier, it doesn't feel like the Dodgers are necessarily going to be at a 10 when it comes to how aggressive and how all in they are going to be at the deadline. We still haven't seen Andrew Friedman pull off a mega blockbuster trade since they've expanded the postseason. I always say when it comes to Andrew Friedman, he likes to buy the Halloween candy the day after Halloween when he can get it at a little bit of a discount and doesn't want to overpay. Do you think he'll overpay on a scale of 1 to 10? Just how aggressive do you think they're going to be? Just kind of what's your sense at the end of the day for what they'll do and how they'll approach the deadline?
So I'll answer the question by asking you a question. Let's list the times when Andrew Friedman has overpaid to get a player. Okay? Let's just come up with that in terms. Yamamoto, I think we can all agree. Yeah. Like they paid absolutely top dollar for that. Ohtani, not even close given the deferrals in that deal. The Guggenheim Group is going to make more money with the money that's not paid to Ohtani over the next 10 years than they'll have to pay him. That's it. They got Freddie Freeman after the Braves dropped out. Their main the only competitor in that bidding were the Tampa Bay Rays. They got Mookie Betts to take a lot of deferred money, didn't give up much in the trade. I think your casting of Andrew is exactly right. He does not believe in paying sticker price. And if you get into these situations where you have to pay sticker price plus 10%, and you have a 7-game lead in your division, right? And you have a 98% chance of making the playoffs in mid-July, I just don't think there's a reason where he's going to step out and go nuts and say, yeah, we're going to tear up the farm system the way that, for example, the Cleveland Indians did when they traded for Andrew Miller in 2016, or the Cubs when they traded for Aroldis Chapman. I don't think Andrew has to operate that way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, he's not batting 1,000, but he's definitely in Ted Williams territory as far as the moves that he makes. We call him Andrew Fleeceman for a reason, but I also think that the ownership of the Dodgers has made it very clear to this organization that there's a sense of urgency now with Mookie Betts' prime, Freddie Freeman's prime. You went out there and you signed Shohei Ohtani. I do think we might see a little bit of a different, at least I'm hoping for, as far as just someone who desperately wants to see this team win a World Series this season. But I would not be shocked too that with the prices that other teams are going to be willing to pay to get over the top, that maybe they kind of back out. And as you point out so precisely, this team does their best work when guys fall into their laps. Freddie Freeman and names like that, and they take it full advantage. So definitely think that could be a possibility. And the
big question, to your point, if I could just jump in, to your point, you think of a guy like Garrett Crochet, right? This is someone with incredible talent, and I do think he potentially is a difference maker. And I could see the Dodgers making a deal for him. If at any point the Baltimore Orioles decide that's got to be the guy, like that, we want Garrett Crochet, and there's a bidding war for Crochet, and the Orioles are serious about it with that deep farm system, I think they'll get him. I think Baltimore will get him. And I think Andrew is not going to go nutty to necessarily to get any player. I haven't seen a player in the marketplace where I could see Andrew saying, yeah, we'll pay retail plus 10%.
Yeah, I think Garrett Crochet is that one impact guy. Hope to see him on the Dodgers. The Orioles, though, they're the team that scares me. I'm afraid of seeing a tweet from you or Jeff Passan or one of these guys that says Garrett Crochet to the Orioles, because you could be facing Garrett Crochet in the World Series, right? We could have a repeat of the 66 World Series, and you have to face Garrett Crochet. So that's the last thing I want to see. I want to see him in Dodger blue. I think Friedman's going to be aggressive, but I think he's also going to be smart and sensible and opportunistic. Okay, so we're going to end the show on this. I have a rapid round, Mr. Buster Olney. I'm calling it boom or buster. Okay. If you agree with this, you say boom. If not, you can say bust. Okay. So let's get it going. Yep. Shohei Ohtani will be batting leadoff when Mookie Betts returns from injury.
Boom.
Ooh. Okay. Shohei Ohtani, who even as the primary DH is leading the National League in WAR, will win the MVP and become the first exclusive DH to win the award.
Boom.
Double boom. Okay. Pulling a pitcher from a no-hitter in the 7th.
And this one, I think it's boom. I think he was at 99 pitches.
Yeah.
Paul Skeens was at 99 pitches. The most pitches he'd thrown in any game this year were 107. There was no chance he was going to finish that game. And so knowing that, you get him out in the seventh inning, especially given how important he is.
Would you agree with me on this take, though? I think case by case. For example, a couple years ago, Clayton Kershaw has the perfect game going to Minnesota. He's already won 3 Cy Youngs and MVP in a World Series. If he wins that game and throws a perfect game, I think his legacy goes up a notch, and I think that would have been more impactful than winning a World Series as a number 3 or 4 starter. I think, don't you think in that situation, considering where he's at in his career, you go batter for batter at least?
I would say this, and I can't remember exactly what the conversation was at that time, but if I were Dave Roberts in that shoes, I'd go, I'd go, Clayton, what do you want to do? It's up to you. Your body, you're in your mid-30s, you're essentially all the injury risk is yours. It's different with Paul Skeens. I think the age makes a huge difference in that one. And if I'd been in Dave's shoes, I would have said, hey, Clayton, whatever you want to do, that's what we're going to do.
And plus, you start in the All-Star game. So Paul Skeens just absolutely electric yesterday. Okay, next one. Dave Roberts will be the Dodgers manager next year, no matter how the Dodgers season ends.
Oh, boy. I'm going to go bust on that one, because I think that if they were to have an early exit first round, and it's so funny because I think Dave does a great job. He wouldn't have a problem getting another job if the Dodgers were to let him go. But it's what you and I discussed, the pressure points. And I do know that with ownerships, they're looking for somebody to blame at times. There'll be somebody up there who will say, this is not acceptable. And Andrew, they're not going to turn over the roster. They're not going to change Andrew. They're not going to change his staff. Who's the easiest person to change? Dave. That's why if I had to guess, I think that an early exit could mean change.
It's a tough job. He gets all the blame when they lose. He gets none of the credit when they win. And it's a tough spot to be in, but I think he realized that. I think he knows what's at stake. Okay, next one.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He gets it.
Absolutely. 100%. Okay, next one. The Dodgers will face the Phillies in the NLCS.
Oh, man. You know what? I'm going to go boom on that as we sit here today. I will tell you that before the season started, I mean, last year I picked the Padres to win the World Series, so I'm obviously a total idiot. This year I picked the Phillies to win the World Series. And right now, at this point, I would not deviate from that pick. They are an awesome team.
Baseball needs that matchup. It would be so great to see those two teams face off. Okay, going to go a little on a different angle on this one because I always want to get your take on this one. Fernando Valenzuela gets inducted into the Hall of Fame one day. Now, he could be inducted with the different committees, the baseball player era committees, the Buck O'Neil type awards. I mean, do you think one day we look at his impact on the game that he could get into Cooperstown at some point?
Yes, because I think the standards for pitchers are going to change inevitably because, you know, the days of starting pitchers throwing 250, 300 innings are over. People will go back and look at Fernando's record through a different context and ask the question, not only Fernando, but guys like Tommy John, and say, how could this person not be in the Hall of Fame? I mean, for years, and the Dodgers, you know, under Tommy Lasorda, were a team that every year they would roll out a rotation that was dominant, and those guys would take the ball and they would throw a ton of innings. And Fernando was right at the top of that list from the time he moved into the rotation, 1981, through his rest of the time with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I think the most mind-blowing thing about Fernando, from 81 to 86, went 97 and 68, had 84 complete games and 26 shutouts in that stretch. I mean, that's insane. An under 3 ERA, still the only player to win the NL Rookie of the Year, the Cy Young, and the World Series in the same season. Then you add the cultural impact. I totally agree with you on that one. Okay, last one here for Boom or Bust. The Dodgers will win 2 or more World Series titles in the next 10 seasons with Shohei Ohtani.
Boom. They will, because every year they're giving themselves a chance. I mean, you think of it like, like a poker game. In the end, it'll work out that they'll put themselves in position because they've done such a great job of drafting, developing. They also have the financial wherewithal to go and spend big money, as they did with Yamamoto, as they did with Ohtani, and where they probably will with Sasaki this winter.
Absolutely. And just a little quick follow-up on that one. When you look at this era of Dodger baseball, do you think that if they win one World Series, it would be considered a success, or do they have to win multiple World Series to consider it a success?
Well, I think it's going to be success either way because of all the fans that they draw and all the games that they win. But I do think there are various categories. Like, would we think of the Dodgers being a dynasty if they don't win World Series? No. They'll be closer to being what the Atlanta Braves were from 1991 to like 2007 when they made the playoffs, like 15 straight years in that window. And that's a hard place to be because you have conversations with former Braves players about what went wrong. How was it that you guys wound up with 3 Cy Young pitchers on that team, plus Chipper Jones, plus Andrew Jones, and you won 1 World Series? The Dodgers don't want to be left having those answering those questions for themselves. And and I know, I personally don't give any demerits for the 2020 championship and the pandemic season.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of baseball fans will.
Yeah.
And that's a reality. And there's always going to be a core of fans who are going to say, well, you haven't won a World Series in a 162 game season.
And I think that's what irks some Dodgers fans, is having to hear that from other fan bases. So at this point, it's like, let's win so we can just shut those fans up, those fans that are attacking us. So yeah, for me, I just want one parade and this Dodger fan can die a happy man and it'll be fantastic. But I will also take a dynasty like you're predicting here on Dodgers Dugout Live. But Buster Olney, we thank you so much joining us here. Busiest guy in baseball, head of the All-Star game, got the trade deadline. We really don't need to plug your socials because you already have over 1 million followers, but you can follow him over on the X and Instagram. Buster, thank you so much. We appreciate the time and enjoy the All-Star game, my man. Thank you for watching this clip from Dodgers Dugout Live, the #1 Dodgers show on YouTube, where we cover everything you need to know about your boys in blue in less than an hour. To check out new episodes, go to youtube.com/DodgersNationTV Monday through Friday in the mornings, and be sure you're subscribed to the Dodgers Nation YouTube channel. For all latest Dodgers news, rumors, hype videos, interviews, giveaways, and more, you're going to find it right here at the #1 channel for your boys in blue. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and until next time, think blue, bleed blue, and I'm out.